Hi, and welcome to Comedy Recapped. Today we'll be talking about the 1996 American satirical black comedy thriller, The Cable Guy. This movie is directed by Ben Stiller and stars Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick. An oddball cable installer, Chip, tries to strike up a friendship with a customer, but things go south quickly, leaving Chip to obsess over his cable client. Beware, spoilers ahead. We open with a man having his cable service repaired. Being serviced by a meek, awkward cable guy, Steven Kovacs rebuffs his attempts at conversation and lets the other man's jokes fall flat. As the cable guy finishes up and leaves, Steven asks if he knows anything about how his friend slipped his cable guy a $50 bribe for premium channels. Nervously, Steven tries to offer him the same thing, but the cable guy acts offended, saying it's illegal and could get him massive fines. Before Steven can take it back, the cable guy says he was just joking and offers to juice him up. The cable guy offers to take Steven to the cable company's satellite, to which at first he claims he's too busy. The cable guy responds to Steven's polite refusal with insistence, setting up plans for them the next day at 6. He leaves, but not before giving Steven a particular preferred customer number for him to page him at, so he won't be stuck on hold with the cable company. Next, Steven is doing a presentation in front of his team at work the next day, along with his boss. His boss is dismissive of Steven's work, leaving the man to feel insecure about his presentation, telling him that if it goes sideways, he's alone. Back at his apartment that night, Steven is watching infomercials when he hears the cable guy shouting up from the street, reminding him of their plans. After all, he decides to go with him, and they visit the satellite. Up on the dish, the two have a heart-to-heart conversation. Steven mentions his brother is a speech therapist and could help with the cable guy's lisp, which he is clearly insecure about. Changing the subject quickly, he offers Steven some advice on Robin, something surprisingly insightful which he admits is actually from Jerry Springer. He suggests that Steven invites Robin over to watch Sleepless in Seattle when it's playing on cable, because women love Sleepless in Seattle, and Steven admits he knows it's her favorite movie. He asks the cable guy what his name is on the way home, having not asked him before. He's touched, as no one usually asks his name, and he says his name is Ernie Douglas, but says that friends just call him Chip. Steven invites his estranged girlfriend, Robin, out for something to eat the next day. He follows Chip's advice and asks her to watch Sleepless in Seattle with him. She's touched by the offer and how insightful he suddenly seems, and agrees to the movie night. On his way out, it cuts to the TV. We're introduced to a cable TV channel, telling him about a massive, televised celebrity court case featuring Sam Sweet, who supposedly killed his brother. Later, we see Steven playing basketball with some friends, one of whom injures himself playing. Chip suddenly shows up and asks to join them, but demands to be on Steven's team. He quickly becomes aggressive, playing with the team in a way that puts everyone off. He makes one slam dunk by running off one of the men's backs and smashes the net. Now that they can't play, the teams disperse, and Steven walks off, as he's annoyed with Chip's behavior. Steven returns home for his movie night with Robin, only to find that Chip left a lot of messages on his machine, becoming shorter and more unhinged over time. Steven doesn't respond. When Robin arrives, they talk about how much Steven hates his boss, including personal attacks on his appearance and lousy hair plugs. Eventually, they turn on the TV to watch the movie, only to find it's blank with static. Steven calls the preferred customer pager number that Chip gave him. It only rings once before he hears a knock at his door. Chip is waiting on the other side, with a severed cable wire in hand. He's angry Steven refused to get back to him, despite Steven just getting home to hear the messages in the first place. Steven promises to hang out on the next day if he turns his cable back on. He does, giving Steven more advice about Robin before leaving. There's a flashback, revealing that Chip was raised in an almost neglectful household, and his mother was out all the time, leaving young Chip in front of a loud screen while warning him it'll rot his brain. During this time, he began to form an unhealthy attachment to television and television shows. The next evening, Chip surprises Steven by taking him to Medieval Times, a restaurant where they can watch knights engage in mock battle, and clearly one of Chip's favorite restaurants to boot. Through dinner, Steven is trying to find a way to politely break their friendship off, interspersed with some awkward conversation with the waitress. Steven finally figures out how to say it, but suddenly they're called into the fighting pit. Chip confesses he gave all the knights free cable so he could bring Steven out to fight each other. Both men are fitted with armor and weapons, while Steven asks if they're just going to mock a fight. But Chip seems dead serious about their upcoming battle. When they fight, Chip starts knocking Steven around until he gets fed up and launches himself against Chip. The crowd goes wild, but Chip takes more dangerous swings at Steven before eventually knocking him down. Both men are put on horses and forced to joust. Steven blasts Chip off his horse. When he gets off to make sure Chip is okay, Chip happily declares they'll meet again before holding Steven's hand up to celebrate his victory. They go back to Steven's place. Steven now seems happy with his odd friend, but quickly sees that Chip broke into his apartment and placed a big screen TV with massive speakers in his living room. Steven makes it clear that Chip has to take everything back while he appreciates the gesture. Chip says he will, but insists they have a karaoke party first. Steven reluctantly agrees. Steven throws a big party the following evening, mostly with Chip's preferred customers. This is a mixture of old men, weirdos, and 2 police officers. Steven calls Robin on the phone, only to learn that she's on a date with another guy. While Steven's upset, Chip comes to comfort him. He gives Chip a small gift, a speech therapy tape his brother suggested that's supposed to help his lisp. And Chip is moved by the thoughtful gift, despite Steven saying it wasn't a big deal, as it's clearly a big deal to him. Steven suddenly notices a beautiful woman at the party, and Chip insists that Steven should go talk to her. Chip then runs into Steven's friend from before and further upsets the man who already doesn't like him. Chip sings a karaoke song, while Steven and the woman meet and begin making out. Playfully, Chip takes a photo before leaving Steven and Heather, that's the woman by the way, alone. The following day, Steven wakes up to Chip cooking them eggs. He's thrilled with the night before, and the two begin to have breakfast. Chip responds with, "It was my treat," which confuses Steven. He seems to be talking around it when Steven asks for more info, with comments like, "This time me, next time you," which doesn't explain. Finally, he asks what Chip means. He explains that the woman was a paid-for prostitute to help Steven get over his heartache. Steven's horrified and kicks a clearly apologetic Chip out of his apartment, despite Chip trying to make him feel better. Next, we see Chip at a fancy restaurant. He's disguised himself with a big fake mustache to alter his appearance. Robin is there too, on a date with some guy who's a jerk and barely listening to her. Chip acts as a restroom attendant, and when the date comes into the restroom, Chip beats him within an inch of his life without warning, leaving the man on the ground. He then tells the date to stay away from Robin, scaring him off. Later, Chip shows up at Robin's apartment and claims Steven has paid to upgrade her cable. After upgrading, Chip tells Robin that he's Steven's best friend and informs her that Steven loves her very much and wants her back. Robin is moved and calls Steven to thank him. Steven realizes what's happened and what Chip did, but takes credit for the cable upgrade. When Steven and Chip run into each other on the way home, Chip explains it was his way of making up for the prostitute incident. Steven explains that while he knows Chip's intentions were good, he still doesn't want to be friends with him anymore. Chip is crushed by this news. Steven is at work the next day and finds himself arrested by the 2 cops from the preferred customer party the other evening. The charge is accepting stolen goods. It turns out the TV system that Chip put in his apartment was stolen. Steven tells his lawyer what happened, but he responds that no one named Chip Douglas works for the cable company. When Chip shows up to visit Steven in jail, Chip explains his name is Larry Tate. He says they could have been best friends, but now they're worst enemies. Steven is released from jail and returns to work, only to quickly realize a video of him and Robin complaining about his boss has circulated through his office. Steven is quickly fired, and then on his way out to his car is harassed by Chip. He finds a hidden camera at home planted beneath his table that caught the footage. Steven takes Robin to dinner at his parents' house, only to find Chip waiting at the door. Steven threatens to call the police, but Chip pulls out a copy of the picture he snapped with Steven and the prostitute. Chip then tells Steven to relax and have a good time. Over dinner, Chip tells the medieval times show story, but reverses their roles, so Steven seems like an aggressive maniac. After dinner, Chip gets everyone to play Porno Password, an adult version of the TV game show. Tensions get high, and finally, Steven snaps and punches Chip in the face. Chip, in response, leaves, and everyone is suddenly angry with Steven. Later, Steven reaches out to the friend who originally suggested the bribe, who has done a background check on Chip after his seemingly strange behavior. He figures out that Chip's names, like Larry Tate, were all classic TV characters. It's also revealed that Chip was fired from the cable company for stalking customers. When Steven gets a call from Chip, Chip seems unhinged. He tells him that he and Robin will hang out, which terrifies Steven, and tells him to stay away from her. He races to Robin's house and meets her landlady. She says she overheard Chip and Robin talking about the information superhighway, which leads him to believe they'll be at the satellite. At the satellite, Chip explains how it works to Robin, the same way he did for Steven before. But Robin is off-put by his creepy demeanor as it begins to scare her. She asks to leave and says she's worried about Steven, which sets Chip off further. Steven arrives shortly after, finding Robin tied up. A rainstorm begins to come down as Chip and Steven fight in the rain, where Chip, on and off, tries to drown him. While Steven gets a few good hits in, Chip knocks him out for just a moment, long enough to climb up the satellite's ladder to the top. Steven climbs up after them and asks Chip to let her go. Chip breaks down, telling Steven he's sorry he screwed up their friendship. Chip curses his mother for not paying him enough attention as a child, letting him get so screwed up, losing touch with reality as emergency services and police join them in a helicopter. Chip looks down and decides to end his life by jumping off into the center of the satellite. Steven tries to stop him, grabbing Chip's arm as he jumps. However, Chip, in response, smiles and lets go. Meanwhile, the result of the notable celebrity murder case from before is just seconds from being broadcast. The world is watching, and Chip's body hits the satellite, which cuts the cable before the verdict is read. However, despite all odds, Chip survives the fall, missing a spike by just a few inches, despite hurting his back. An emergency helicopter takes Chip away. Steven asks Chip his name again, one last time, but Chip replies, Ricky Ricardo. The helicopter takes off, and Steven and Robin kiss. Inside the helicopter, one EMT tells Chip, "You're gonna make it, buddy." Chip then asks, "Am I really your buddy?" The EMT shrugs, saying, "Yeah, sure you are." Chip then gives a devious smile at the camera, and the film cuts to black. And that's going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this recap as much as we did. Let us know what you thought of this classic comedy, or if you've seen it before. While you're at it, if you liked the video and want to look into other movies with us, then make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on. That way you won't miss a single video.